Hello and welcome to another pattern recognition video featuring sacrifice patterns today. All right, we're going to do 10 puzzles. Pause at any time if you need to think longer. White to move here. And these are all about sacrifices. So knowing that that's the tactic, hopefully that will help you out, especially you beginners out there. All right, and we can look at the material here and see, generally you want to check that as well. 7 pawns versus 7, but the rest of the material is even. Black has just moved a queen over here to D7, attacking our queen, trying to trade off an attacker here because our queen's lined up on their king, the bishop is lined up there. But what should we do here? Take a look. What do you think is the winning move? All right. Well, hopefully you found it. We're going to sacrifice the queen to clear the back rank. And if the rook captures, then our rook delivers a back rank mate here. Capture, and they're not even going to show you anymore. But as I said, if the rook captures, well, then we just deliver a checkmate on the back rank. If the rook moves, well, then we're just ahead material. All right. Next problem. The queen is what? Pressed forward here, captured something. Was there a pawn there? Sometimes it makes that first move quickly and I didn't see, but no matter. Now it's black's turn and we're looking for checks, captures, and threats in that order, but we know there's a sacrifice somewhere. So how do we do it? Well, usually it takes 3 pieces to checkmate a king. We have 2 rooks lined up on the king. We have a queen in the mix and a bishop over here cutting up through this diagonal. So sacrifices, maybe a queen sacrifice here or here. But then what? We have to make sure we have a good follow-up. All right. We need to do something here because we're in trouble. If we don't press through with the attack to a checkmate, after we sacrifice, we could be down material, and then they could start, attacking, counterattacking. All right. Maybe, what happens if we go here? Rook recaptures. The other rook can capture with check. Well, excuse me. Queen captures, rook captures. We capture, rook captures. We capture with check. I don't know if that's enough. Maybe, what if we capture here? Then, all right. This one's giving me a little more difficulty. Hopefully you are doing well on this one. Queen sacrifices are possible, but also maybe a rook attack here. Capture. It can't capture this way with the pawn or we deliver a mate up here. So that looks good. Capture. The rook is forced to capture. Then our other rook swoops in. Okay, so check. There we go, and we deliver the mate. All right, hopefully you found that one. That was a little trickier, especially for beginners out there. All right, just had a capture, and our queen is under attack. Okay. What can we do here? You know, we're obviously looking for sacrifices, but what is the best way to sacrifice? And we look for checks first, as they're the most forcing. The rook could check, but the queen could capture. But then we go here with check. The queen would block. Then we go up here. So maybe that works, you know, unless there's something easier that I'm overlooking. So check with the rook. Queen is forced to capture. We capture this rook with check. The queen will block. Then the queen moves up here. And if the queen blocks, we can capture because the bishop is covering that square as well. All right, sorry about that. I know that's a lot of arrows flying all around. But I think that works. All right, and they're just going to block that way. So either way, it was a mate in the end. All right, I hope you did well on that one. Let's see what we have next here. The queen is just captured a pawn. And now there's a threat of what? Moving in here and attacking? No, the bishop is covering that. No matter, it is white's turn here. So what do we do? Okay. I think we could sacrifice a rook. So take a look at that. We want to look at those checks first. So this is an obvious sacrifice. Capture the pawn. If the king, remember, when a king is under attack, he has what, 3 options? He can capture the attacker, block the attacker, or run. If he can't do that, then it's a mate. So if he, you know, we capture the pawn, he's probably going to capture. If he tries to run, then our queen will just move in there with a check and then a mate. So if we sacrifice the rook, the pawn captures, the queen captures with check, and now the king is running. If he goes towards the center, our bishop can deliver a check. If he goes to the other side, we also have the threat of bringing the other rook in. So let's take a look at this. Rook sacrifice. The queen ends up there checking the king. Now if the king moves into the corner, we can check and start chasing the king. If the king goes to the center here, then what? We can attack with the bishop, delivering a check. The king would probably try to run towards the center. We can keep chasing. All right, it looks like it works. I probably should calculate more, but to keep the video rolling along, let's try this. All right, and they're not even going to show the entire thing. So I'm going to pull up the analysis real quick and just see, what could have happened. So queen takes that pawn. We sacrifice the rook. Our queen checks. And now, if the king goes to h8, we check with h6. King goes back to the g file. The rook becomes involved with rook to g1. So it looks like that's the secret, to involve the rook. So the king goes here. We just check. He has to go back to the g file. And now the rook gets involved. So king to h7. And then we have a mate here. All right, back to the puzzles. We're on to problem 5. Queen has dropped back, doing what here? Targeting this pawn along with the rook. But can we ignore that pawn and instead go after the king? All right, we're looking for sacrifices, and it looks like the only one available that looks any good. We don't want to bring our queen up there and sacrifice it, or anywhere else. So sacrifice the rook. The king, if it captures, we bring our queen up, delivering check. The king has to move over. And then we check again, and the king is getting trapped. So here we go. Yeah, because now the only place the king can go is here. We just deliver a check, and wherever the king goes, we're going to deliver a mate on queen to b2 there. All right, the next 5 problems. Queen has jumped forward here, attacking our queen. But we have the required 3 pieces aiming at the king. A lot of times it takes 3 pieces to conduct a successful checkmate attack, depending on the rest of the position, how many pieces your opponent has defending. But we have 3 attackers, and they have what? Maybe this bishop barely defending, and I don't know, there's not much defense here. And we have a discovered attack, so we probably need to move that bishop and unleash a discovered attack. Okay, where to move that bishop, though? If we just move back along this diagonal, well, the king is just going to run over here. And then what? There's not much of a follow-up. So we need to sacrifice, because this is all about the sacrifices. So we'll just go here with a discovered attack. The king will have to capture, and unless he blocks and just gives up a bishop. But then we just take that and check again. So he'll take, and our queen will be able to deliver the mate here on h2. So discovered check, and the queen mates. All right. 4 more to go. We just had a capture. Our queen is under attack. Do we worry about that bishop, or do we have something better here? All right. Maybe, well, since it's sacrifices we're looking for, maybe we can sacrifice something like the queen. Does that work? Probably not, because the pawn can capture. So maybe we look for another check. Always remember to look at checks first, because they are most forcing. So we capture. If the king takes the rook that we sacrificed, then our queen attacks and delivers a mate. So let's go after that rook and then deliver the mate. All right, 3 more to go. What do we have next? The rook has centralized. It was under attack by the bishop. So now I think we can just sacrifice, of course. Okay, what should you sacrifice? You have different options. You have a bishop sacrifice, a queen sacrifice, or a rook sacrifice. Well, the bishop is doing a good job lining up on the king. The rook is as well. You know, we probably don't want to give up our queen unless we know that we're going to checkmate. So let's look at this rook sacrifice. So if we go here, capture, we deliver. Now the king, or excuse me, the opponent does not have to capture. They probably will. They can't capture with the F pawn because the bishop is pinning that to the king. So if they capture this way, well, now our queen can capture and then deliver a mate. The one issue is that if we take, what if they try to run into the corner? Well, then we could deliver a check there. So to keep this moving along, let's see what happens. All right, they don't even want to show it, so let's look at the analysis. All right, if they go there and we sacrifice the rook, well, if they move the king into h1, it's still a mate, but it takes longer. So, of course, if they capture here, the queen will just recapture with check and then deliver a mate on g2. So what I wanted to look at is that. Well, then the recommendation is, interestingly enough, rook to g2, which I didn't even look at that. Oh, because you're threatening a mate over here. Oh, wow. Okay. But then the pawn can block that and attack our queen. I probably would have looked at this move. The king goes there. Now we go here, threatening a mate with the queen capturing on h2. So king captures, but then we have queen captures with check, king runs towards the center, check, king is running, queen to f3, the king is forced back, and then we have a mate. All right, so that was a little bit tricky to figure all that out, especially for the beginners out there, but I thought I would just show it, to help you understand what you have to learn and improve on to be able to solve those attacking calculations like that, solve that problem. All right, here we go. We got, what did we just do? That was the one we just played. So we're on to the next problem. Knight drops back, attacking our rook in the center. But maybe we can sacrifice the rook. If we do that, capture, pawn captures. Does that work? Do we have a good follow-up? Take a look at it. See what you can figure out. Pause if you need more time. So capture, capture. The other rook captures, delivering check. The king would have to run. Oh, can the king even run? Maybe it can't. So capture. The king could run right now, but if he captures here and we capture delivering check, there's nowhere for the king to run. So capture. Oh, there's going to be a block. But we did knock, a bunch of material out. So he can't go anywhere. Remember, when the king is being attacked, there's the three options. Capture the attacker, block the attacker, or run. And if you can't do any of those, then it's a checkmate. So we can't capture that rook. We can't run anywhere because of this queen. We have to block. And the only blocking move is here. But then we can just go ahead and capture that bishop, and then we'll be, well, we're not quite ahead in material, or are we? So if that's the only move to block, let's take a look at it. I'll throw the analysis board up there. Okay, in the game, we had knight to d7. Our rook is under attack, so we start attacking. Now the only thing here is bishop to e7. But then we have, wow, rook take, okay, no, that makes sense because the bishop is guarding. We capture that. The king has to go to d8. But now, what do we do next? The best move is queen to g4. If we go here, we're threatening a mate in 1. So the king should run. Wow, and it's not looking good after that. But, you know, if you want to see more, you can set it up on a board and calculate that. But for now, we're moving on to the final problem. A rook is captured here. We have, oh, wow, rook and queen on the 7th rank, black's 7th rank, our 2nd rank. But there's a threat of mate here or here. So white needs to do something now if they want to turn the tide here. So where can we sacrifice? Well, the rook sacrifices are always interesting or something to think about. Here, the only move would be to capture. But then our queen could capture. The king can only go here, and then we can deliver a mate here. So hopefully you found that. You know, try and solve it in your head if you can. Pause if you need more time. If not, here we go. Capture, capture. And the only place the king can go is up into that corner. But then we'll be able to checkmate from h6 there with the help of our knight. All right, well, feel free to leave comments as always. Like and subscribe to support the channel if you haven't already. Thank you for watching and have a super chess day.